Welcome to the Keeping IT Real podcast. This podcast features honest and transparent conversations about what it takes to manage corporate technology and expenses today. Each episode, listen to true and personal stories from IT professionals who are working hard to make sure their business stays connected and competitive. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo, and let's meet our next guest.
Today, I am joined by Dr. Aaron Hill, the Executive Director of IT Support for Fontainebleau Las Vegas, a luxury resort in the Las Vegas Strip. With a very wide range of professional experience, Aaron finds himself in his current role leading both the IT operations team and the application support teams to align business with tech and find opportunities to streamline IT. Aaron, thanks for being on the podcast.
Glad to be here.
I'm not going to be shameless about this or shameful about this, but I stalked you before meeting you. And I have noticed that your career path has been very unique. A lot of the guests I've talked to, it's like, oh, college I knew, high school I knew, I grew up playing with computers, yada, yada, yada. And some have been like, oh, like I navigated into it right out of college and I've just been there ever since. But unless I'm wrong, to me, it looks like you kind of started in IT directly just about around a year ago. And before that, it's been operations, It's been different industries, it's been different verticals, it's been project management. So kind of talk about that from your perspective. Why have you always been in this sort of, I want to hop from different position to different position, how you were able to do that, and then how you ended up in IT now?
Yeah, I think that, the common thread for, the various positions that I've been in and just, for your listeners and viewers, kind of a quick recap, for those who haven't stalked me on LinkedIn. I'm a retired military officer. I spent 23 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. And I think that's kind of where, this, ability to, kind of be adaptable and find myself in any situation or any kind of role or industry and still thrive kind of comes from. So when I retired, I jokingly said, now I've got to grow up and get a real job. And, my first venture was in retail distribution, where, I did kind of dabble in a little bit of, tech, but really it was, a massive, project, kind of revamping business models and doing an expansion. And, so from there, the reason I was picked up was just my ability to connect the dots and find order in chaos and kind of keep a project moving along. The success there took me into another role similar, but this time e-commerce, starting up a Western expansion for a company. So growing both the people, the processes, and the technology, which is kind of a trio that I'm sure I'll come back to a couple of times during our time together. But my success from there led me to be a COO of a startup environmental company, 4Ocean, where we're monetizing, if you will, the ability to sell sustainable products, but at the same time do corporate good. And so created them from an LLC and took them to be a public benefit corporation, and they're still thriving today. And then I went back to the service. I went back and consulted in the Pentagon for about 2 years, or actually as an employee there at the Department of the Navy. Left there to do some consulting for other executive branch agencies like FEMA and the Department of Agriculture. And that's how I ended up here is, in between contracts, I had a local, headhunter who was looking for somebody that could do project management, who could, kind of connect the dots. And, at the time, Fontainebleau, which is a property, that had been sitting dormant for nearly 2 decades, got a huge, kind of influx of energy. The original owner had come back, wanted to launch this property in a very short period of time. And, they were looking for somebody to kind of be the nexus for a number of different IT projects. So I came on board and really started off with, helping them in a consultant, role, doing logistics, and connecting the dots for over, I would say about a dozen or so project managers that were responsible for various aspects of, IT that goes into a resort and casino of this size. And, in there, I did what I call, demonstrating the capability in front of a need. And that was being able to connect the dots, have that bias for action, being a people person and a leader, developing people and processes, and then bringing in the right technology to support it. So, in demonstrating that capability in front of their need, after we opened, I was about ready to move on to my next contract, and the Fontainebleau team reached out and said, "Hey, we would really like you to stay." And that's how I landed as the executive director of IT support. So I report directly to the CIO and the chief financial officer, and I manage about 2/3 of the IT function here in Fontainebleau.
You said, I don't know, you're going to have to word it again for me because I thought it was awesome. You said you presented value in front of a need. Is that exactly how you said that? How did you say that exactly?
Yeah, I demonstrated a capability in front of a need.
Which I think is awesome because one, like that is the best way to show your worth by just like actually directly addressing a need that they need. Two, it also is, that's real pressure, right? To be like, I need to be able to execute this. I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this, but do you want to dive in a little bit into what that need was, how you figured out what the solution was and then executed that?
Yeah, I think that, for us, one of the challenges, and I can back up, I've done several, either launches or startups. Anytime an organization is, growing or launching a new facility, there's a certain amount of chaos around that, especially as that go live date, gets closer and closer. There's all those, oh my God, we need to do this or we need to do that. Things that as you go through the process of opening a property that you realize, man, we need to, this is a little bit harder than we thought. And I think that for me, in my case, there was a situation where we had, over a dozen different program managers or project managers that had done fantastic job of getting their system or getting their applications, getting their kind of suite of, their portfolio aligned and ready for opening. But there was a lot of integration that needed to take place. What maybe a gaming system needs to tie into a hotel operation system. What's a hotel operation systems may need to tie into a facilities system. And so, there was that aspect of it. So kind of that virtual integration. But then there was also just, in this case, it was a property under construction. And again, no different than when I was working with, a retail distribution and they were doing an expansion and you had construction going on in the building, but you still had to operate. No different than starting an e-commerce facility, out here in Las Vegas, where the building was being built from the ground up. That, there's a lot of physical constraints to what you can and can't do. And, I've learned that, it's best if you've got somebody on the ground that, that can talk to, construction and what's going on and understand, how to, as you're loading in IT equipment, how do you do that when there's people with jackhammers, right? And stone cutting saws. So, understanding how to that kind of flow and how it goes together. The capability that I brought was, understanding how to do logistics. And so how to flow, as you can imagine, a tremendous amount of, electronic equipment, whether it was office monitors and keyboards and computers to, ID verification machines, the visual, signage in applications, and hardware that goes to, gaming, loyalty programs, hotel front desks. So you think about all of that equipment, we're talking truckloads upon truckloads, where do you bring it in and where do you put it and how do you get it into where it needs to go? And how do you integrate, if somebody is, one project manager is the person that's handling, say, ID verification systems, and another one's handling, front desk check-in systems, both of which need to integrate, both of which need to be in the building at the same time in order to connect. How do you flow that in from vendors from across the country and in some cases across the world? So, again, it kind of goes back to, finding that order in the chaos. And, if you focus on on the little things. And, as I say, where the devil's in the details, and, you can do that, help connect the dots. It leads to bigger and better things. And, so, kind of in that spirit of, demonstrating the capability in front of a need, my best advice to anyone is, when you're given an opportunity, balloon where you're planted. You don't have to necessarily, go out and be everything to everyone, but if you're hired to do that thing, do it exceptionally well. And that's what I did. And that's what I do. I don't have to do more. I just need to be more. And you take that one thing that you've been tasked to do, or those several things, a half dozen things that you've been tasked to do. You do those and you do those well, you're able to take it all the way to completion. And now you got results to show for it. And then you're on to the next best thing.
Yeah. Speaking of next best things, obviously you solve one problem and one need, but there are always more needs and always more problems to solve. And so in your role right now, what is kind of the challenges that you're facing, and how are you tackling them?
I'll kind of go back to people, process, and technology, right? People, process, and I say technologies are tools. When you're starting up, the people that you have, are creators, they're hyper focused on, on getting that one thing, the door open, in this case, right? And like I said, similar to past rules, we're gonna go live, and there's a lot of creative solutions to get that done. So you've got those folks in place. You've got, in terms of process, it's a little bit more, I'd say, ad hoc, right? When you look at a maturity model, we're going to do whatever it takes. I often go back to, an older movie of, Apollo 13, where they dump a bunch of junk on the table and said, okay, well, this is what they have up there in the damaged, capsule, figure it out, find a solution. And so it's just, taking what you've got and trying to make it work. So that's that opening, that launch, that go live environment. So the challenge that I think that any organization that's in the same position that we're in now is, how do you take that kind of ad hoc, hyper creative, solutions oriented, and how do you gravitate towards stability and maturity? And, so I think that's where, again, you look at your people, first it's, do we have the right roles for the long term, and, do we have the right level of staffing? Do we have the right people in the right place? So I look at, the staffing. I look at, what we're looking to do to develop the right skill sets going forward. I look at our processes, moving them out of ad hoc into a more stable environment. And, specifically here, with IT, I'll take a service desk example, right? Like, when you open, you may just have, a phone line. Hey, I've got a problem. Well, what's your problem? Where are you located? To, a more robust, service ticketing, queue, and a service catalog where, you can get deep into the details, because now you have the time and you have the, better resources. And you're looking to always, move that needle from kind of the ad hoc to optimal, right? So I think that, like any organization, we're in that, kind of post, or more coming up on our 1 year anniversary. And I think we're moving from that, from that ad hoc to repeatable to, down the road to being optimal. And so that's the challenge, right? Is, what can you do to, go back, look at your processes, make them more efficient. What can you do from a people standpoint? Make sure that you've got the right people in the right roles. And you transition to a stable environment that, and once you get stable, then it allows for that next cycle of growth.
I mean, what we're talking about here is scalability. It's change management, right? And this is always, tough, because you mentioned, you go from ad hoc, hyper creative into stable and process. How do you do that without losing that hyper creativity, the flexibility, how do you not diminish the innovation while also increasing, like you said, the stability, and security? And this is really that issue of scalability. How do you scale like that and keep your team happy, but also your team very productive?
Yeah, no, I think, to use the analogy, what you're describing is, that organizational, growth, paradigm of, I often relate it to a game of Jenga, right? You want to make that in order to win the game, you gotta grow that stack. You got to take a block out and put it on the top, and as you grow, so that represents scale, right? But you've got to be careful. There's some tiles that you can pull up have to change in order for you to grow. But there's some in there that are your foundational pieces that are load bearing, right? And if you pull that out, then the organization will fail. And so there lies, the challenge. So I think, one of the things that I'm doing as I take a look at, being a learning organization. And what I mean by that is to foster that innovation. I do a couple of things. I empower the team to make decisions, to make mistakes. I'm a firm believer that, I hired the right people. So maybe a little bit of influence of Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
Hire great people, surround yourself with great people and let them do what they do. And we're doing that. Got some tremendous amount of experience and a tremendous amount of talent at the same time. A lot of folks that, are fresh out of, college or fresh out of the military that are, eager to learn. So, that intentional placement of putting an experienced, application engineer as an example with, somebody who's kind of fresh out of the military, or fresh out of college. And so you have a new perspective and kind of the old perspective, the experience and that, and then that challenging voice. So, you're creating an environment where, you can challenge, the status quo. And we're not tied into doing things the way that we've always done them. That's one of the beauties of a startup is, I joke, even though, in this case, Blue's been around for 70 years. But the hotel here, the hotel resort and casino here, has only been a year. Right. And so, so when I look at that, there is no way that we've always done it. It's all new, but we've got some experienced hires from, as I jokingly say, down the street, right? Down the strip, it's come from other properties. And, and so I hear, well, this is how we did it down there. Okay, great. Now, but you were at this property, you were at that other property, you were in different, we're all experienced. We all have great ideas. Now, how do we do it together? Like, this is our chance to kind of take best practices and things that work here and there. As I say, learn from other people's mistakes. And, how do we combine that into what we want to do here? And so, I would say that, being open to best practices and then shaping it to the way, that you're, as called group norms, the way that we agree that we want to do it. Being open to making mistakes. I'm a fan of, the fact that, Michael Jordan got cut from his high school basketball team. Wayne Gretzky never hit all of his shots. And, you hear, like Hall of Famers like Derek Jeter, even, from the recent World Series, Aaron Judge, he doesn't get a home run every time he gets up to bat. He swings and he misses, but he's a great player, right? So if you don't get up and swing for the fences, you're never going to get a home run. So try. And if you fail, great. Well, you'll know not to, and using the baseball analogy, you'll know not to reach and stretch and try and hit one from the outside. Wait for effort to get to your sweet spot. So, we're looking for those opportunities to experiment, to try new things. And I think that's what's so great about IT, right? Is that there are so many different tools and so many things that are happening in our environment that, we can look at, things like generative AI to, hey, is this a way that we can improve the way that we make decisions? Can we get better information to move faster? And, so I think, at the end of the day, it's kind of back to that Jenga analogy, what do we need to leave in place that's our structure that's going to give us the stability, but what are the things that we can divest of so that we can grow and try new things? And therein lies our challenge today.
And it's a big challenge, right? Because it's not a one solution, a one problem answer. There's a lot of moving parts and you have to figure out what are those foundational pieces. You have to figure out which are the pieces you could grow. You have to figure out if you have the members to be able to handle those challenges.
Yep.
The capacity. Where does one really start with this? How do you prioritize? Like you said, right? IT is amazing because it's always changing and it's always dynamic. But what happens then is you have a lot of potential IT initiatives and you can't do them all at once, right? You can't there's just too many changes to be like, let's do this and this and this and this and this. You don't have the budget, you don't have the time, you don't have the resources. And so when we're getting all of these changes, and you mentioned it's a year old, so you're very, startup culture, still not full process, still maturing. How do you go about prioritizing what to do next when resources are so limited?
Yeah, no, I'd like to say that I use a magic 8 ball, but the truth is, priorities are, and setting priorities, are very, very critical, very fundamental to what we do. At the end of the day, I preach that, priorities are those things that, if I've laid those out effectively, when I get resource constrained, I know where to turn my attention. And I think the biggest resource constraint that we face is time. Because let's face it, I can't run down to Best Buy and buy more time. I can buy a lot of things, but time isn't one of them. So, what I take a look at, in our kind of intake into, the IT portfolios is, what is the, application? What is the system? What is it we're trying to do? So, first take a look at what are the requirements, right? And then, from there, what is the value that this is going to add? And then I do, value-based prioritization, those things that are going to, move the needle, so to speak, the furthest and the fastest. Well, and that's what we can go after. But it's a balancing act, right? So I take those projects or those things, because they're not all equal. Like you said, they're, some are big projects and some are just, minor changes or small, adaptations or, quick onboarding of an application and, we can operate more efficiently. So I kind of break them into big rocks, little rocks, and sand. And, if you're familiar with kind of that analogy, if you put, that big rock in a bucket first, well then, and I can tackle that, then, when I've got a little bit of time on the margins, I can chip away at the smaller rocks, and the sands are, those are things that I can knock out in a day or two. And we manage our time and we manage our projects, accordingly, kind of, if you will, the Pomodoro or that Eisenhower technique of getting things done. But at the end of the day, if I had to put a bumper sticker on it, is, we take a look at, what's going to be truly value added. And from a business perspective, what's that return on investment? I'm going to spend time and energy, things that, I can't get back. I can't compensate, effectively. So, what's the best use of the time of my team? And those are the things that we'll go after first.
At the end of the day, that is the challenge. That is the question everyone is asking. How do you determine what is the best way to prioritize? And it's different for everyone. Some people measure by ROI. Some people measure it by looking at risk, and whichever one is the smallest risk. So, I think my frustration turned into a realization that you had said, which is like, you got to talk to your people and figure out what works for you guys. There's no one size fits all answer. It is completely dependent on your circumstances, your team, and the context. And so
with IT and our project management, what are the things that we absolutely must do? And then I think, the other piece of it, either deleting or deferring, down the road, right? It's great, but I'm not resource for project X and Y and Z. I'm going to kind of put those, it's not important right now, and I'm not going to be able to resource it. So empowering the team to say no, right? It's very powerful, because I think especially in a service focused, industry, right? IT, service and support, right? I'm there to say yes. I'm there to find a way. I hear this often, like, you got to find a way to say yes, but you got to do it in one that you can find a way to say yes and still deliver. And if you can't do that, then you're cheating your client, you're cheating your customer, you're cheating, your own business. So, find a way to yes, but maybe find that way it's mutually beneficial. And so if it's I've got to defer this project until, Q2 when I'm better resourced, and you explain that and you have those conversations, then, then it becomes a win-win. It's not something that's forgotten about, but it's not something you've got to act on and complete right away when you've got bigger rocks that you got to break down.
If you say yes to everything, you're going to do a disservice to your customer, like you said, because you're going to not do all of those things really well. And so sometimes saying no is the best thing you can do for your customer. And so if you really want to serve your customer, it requires you to know your team's capacity, where you're at, what you're doing, so that you know that you can say yes or no. And so if you're not doing that, then you're doing your customer a disservice because you don't know what you can say yes or no to. And so it requires somebody like you who can take the information and see their team and then connect those dots and figure out how to allocate and stuff like that. It's probably relatively second nature to you, but I want to know if you can try to explain exactly how you see what you were given and know which dots to connect.
Yeah. So I think here's an approach that I take. Certainly have patented it. So, feel free to take this one and run with it. But, the first thing is, knowing your people, right? As I talked about people, process, and technology. So knowing your people, knowing their skill sets, their strengths and their opportunities, as you're developing them as employees, as you're developing them as people and both technically, and on a leadership level as well. Know what their capabilities are. And so you'll be able to, as I say, read the room. I can tell, when folks come in, and they come by the break room or, just the way they carry themselves in the hall, whether they're having a good day or a bad day, because I know my team. So I think that, that human element, is very important. But here's the other thing is, I think often in my short observation in IT, but not unique to IT, is that, in a service oriented organization or entity within a business, we become order takers. There's this very kind of reactive nature. I want, I need, how do I? It's broken, and so we're kind of like, to use the analogy, we're like firemen, right? We, the alarm bell goes off, we rush out, we put out the fire, then we come back, reset, and and we wait for the next call. What I'm working to do is to become more proactive. And so be more like that fire marshal who goes out, inspects the building, says, you need to fix this faulty wiring. You need to move those oily rags away from the heater so that we don't have a fire. Hey, by the way, while I'm out there, here's a way that you could do things a little bit better. And so with that, if you're familiar with kind of Six Sigma, I do regular Gemba walks. And, for those who don't know, Gemba being that kind of Japanese phrase of, in the place of value. So I get out regularly, and I go visit, here on this property, as an example, I'll go out and I'll visit the bell desk or the transportation and ballet or, kitchens and I'll get out to where people are using our technology, where they're using the apps, not here in the IT, break fix room or the IT operations, but, get out into the business. And when I do that, I can see where people, I can see their process and I can see where they're using technology in their process. And because I have a more macro view of other technology in the building, as we spoke about at the beginning of our conversation, I'm going out to conferences, I'm networking, I'm learning, more and more what's out there and available. I can look at somebody who's using, say, a dry erase board to track something and say, you know what, there's a better tool for that. And so I can get ahead of those asks and I can be proactive in understanding, also their people, their process, and I can apply it, or I can help them apply a better technology or a better tool. And now that I'm being proactive, I can do it on my terms. I can do it on my schedule. I'm being proactive. So the sense of urgency isn't necessarily there because they're already using that dry erase board. It's working just fine. There's not a break in their process, but I can find a way on my own terms and my own timeline and my own resourcing to make their process better. And that's where the win comes, right?
Yeah, for sure. I have two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is, you mentioned before, and this is true, right? We can't buy more time. All we can do is work more efficiently and gain more of the time back that is limited already, right? What currently in your role are things that you wish were off the plate of your team so that you had more time, but it's not a high enough priority for you to just do it and get rid of it and automate it? What are those things that are like, it's so inconvenient, but it's not important enough, but it does take up a lot of time?
Yeah, I think that, kind of speaking generally, as we've moved from this very chaotic, opening environment to stable, steady state, the things that I look for is where can I get time back in our day? And the first thing I look at are, those processes that are manual. Can I automate those file transfers? Can I automate or can I integrate different applications so that these either manual transactions or looking at for example modern integration. What can I do to become more proactive so that where's that time going? So I guess to kind of back up on a more macro scale, I look at where's my team spending their time, and we do a weekly huddle, so I know what they're working on, and kind of give me a sense of how much time are we working on a particular task or project, and how can we be more efficient? And I think that as an example, I think that there's a number of AI assistants, whether you're using a chat GPT or you're using Microsoft Copilot as an example, just in the way that you are able to get caught up and get summaries on on long strings of emails. It's just a very benign example, but hey, if I can, if I've got 500 emails in my inbox as I was gone for 2 days, if I can use AI to summarize that stuff and I can get through it instead of taking me a whole day to burn down through a backlog, I can do it in an hour or two by summarizing. Well, now I've kind of gained time back. So if I take kind of that mindset of where can I be more efficient, and I apply that across the board, and I apply that to my different teams and the different portfolios, you start to kind of claw back that time. And I know that I've been in some discussions where like, well, AI is going to replace us. It's not. AI is simply it's another tool in that toolkit that allows you to take that raw data and that information, created an understanding quickly, and you can make better, faster decisions, and you can spend your time on that growth cycle. Right? It'll help you get to those Jenga blocks a lot faster.
Yeah. The final question is, kind of that final soapbox moment. Any important lesson, challenge that you overcame? What are some of those, and kind of share that with the audience now?
I would say that, I think for me, it's just a reminder that, kind of back to, I guess, my original statement, imposter syndrome, right? That this is like my first, executive role in IT. I've never been, I didn't come up in that traditional sense from, being a service desk tech to, maybe a network engineer or cyber. And then, I find myself in a leadership position. We all bring, different life skills and different perspectives. And I think that, when you look at, the larger picture, have that confidence that, what you're bringing to the table, your own education, your own life experiences, and you're applying it to a problem. Because at the end of the day, it's a people process. The IT is the tool. And so if you understand, the people in the process, the tool piece of it will come. And, I apply that both to, not only myself, but in the lens in which I look at hiring people, onto our team as we grow. It doesn't necessarily, it's not as important to have, those super technical skills, because the application, if you're good on application X, hey, next year Y may come out, and I need to know that you're trainable, that you're teachable, and that you're coachable. So I think that, that's a big piece of it. And then I think that, as a society, as we continue to become more and more technically and, adept, that, we all have, I think, a lot more IT experience, than we realize. And, I look back at my past roles, in implementing warehouse management systems and labor management systems. I'm always blown away, even in this current role at my business colleagues, whether it's in the HR arena or the finance, just how technically savvy some folks are out there. So there's a hidden gem out there. So if you're looking for resources, don't forget to look within, right? Just because they're not in your IT department doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have IT expertise out there in your organization. And, you'll find some hidden gems in there.
I love that. And the final closing thing of IT is everywhere.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. This was a really awesome conversation. I think very refreshing to hear it from someone who's simultaneously old and new to the industry, if that makes sense. And so kind of having the fresh legs of, I'm not talking to someone who knows nothing about IT, but I'm not talking to someone who has known it for 30, 40, 50 years. So it's cool to have that refreshing take. And also, I think you just very well. So
thank you.
I just wanted to commend you there. And also it does kind of show me that you are good at the job that you were claiming to be good at.
I'm still fooling them.
So Aaron, I just want to thank you for your time again and thank you for your energy and your expertise, but also your humor. And I wish you all the best and we'll definitely keep in touch, but take care.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation.
We hope you enjoyed this Keeping IT Real episode, and thank you for listening. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. This podcast is all about celebrating and connecting professional heroes who work hard at IT every day. To continue the conversation and learn how VCOM can help you better buy, manage, and pay for your technology, visit us at vcomsolutions.com. Until next time.